And we're back with another episode of Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Alexander Wilson, and my co-host, Anthony Rivardo. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at AlexWilsonESM and Anthony_Rivardo, and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. We're going to be unrolling a lot of awesome new content. We brought another guy on, Jack Quartararo. He's going to be producing highlight videos, and Anthony's going to be here to give you your daily dosage of New York Giants football moving forward. And once things return back to normal, we are going to have a lot more awesome content to produce. Hopefully we'll get into some of these virtual Zoom calls with the Giants players soon and give you some background insider information on what's going on behind the scenes. We're working really hard to make this happen for all you guys, and we're trying to bring it to you guys on the YouTube channel and in the podcast. So as we grow, you guys are going to get more exclusive content, and hopefully it'll be a lot more fun and enjoyable once the season rolls around. And as a bonus to that, we're actually starting a new exclusive podcast called The Pick Is In the coming days, focusing on draft prospects and special interviews with players, coaches, and scouts. If you really like football, you're going to want to learn about this podcast and learn from the podcast. We're going to have actual coaches, scouts, players, exclusive people coming onto this platform and actually giving you guys tons of new information and ways to consume things. It's going to be super just knowledgeable, and if you really want to learn about the game and the inside aspects, the verbiage, everything in between, this is going to be a great place for you to go and see and experience this exclusive content. In addition to that, we're going to be doing some awesome in-person stuff as well in the future. So we want to do tailgate parties, game watches in the city, so everyone can get involved. It should be a really good time. Anthony and his White Claws will hopefully attend. So it's going to be really fun. We want to make this a community, and you guys are a huge part of this, and we thank you so much for tuning in every single week with us. It's going to get even better in person, alive, and we're going to give out free stuff and just have fun and really just enjoy the Giants. And we're going to try to produce insider information and really just make this a unique experience, different than any other platform. That's our goal. So if you have any advice, feedback for us, please leave it in the comments section on YouTube. We're here to do our best and make this an enjoyable rest of quarantine, essentially, until we can break free into the sports world. But to get started, how are you doing, Anthony?
I'm doing good. I'm really excited for all the things that you just mentioned. Obviously excited to get back into society and start, interviewing players. Obviously, I got a good taste of that at the Tom Coughlin event in October or September, and I was really looking forward to doing that again at the License Plate Guy charity event. But of course, unfortunately, we weren't able to go to that with COVID-19. But, things are starting to return to normal, it seems like. So hopefully soon enough, we'll be able to get back out there and do some interviews and all of that and, provide our awesome viewers with some more awesome content.
Exactly. And I'm really excited for everyone to kind of develop with us. If you've been here since day one and watched the podcast, you've seen us interview players, bring on some incredible guests, and we really just want to keep growing on that and making this even more exciting and enjoyable for you. And that's our goal, is to make this the best platform that you can get everything from YouTube to podcasts to written content to in-person activities. This is going to be so cool and just, cohesive with everybody involved. And we really want to introduce some new and cool segments to the podcast. So the first thing that we want to talk about today is we're going to give you a New York Giants fact of the day. So I'm going to let Anthony start with his.
Okay, New York Giants fact of the day. I'm going to keep it relevant to our recent times. Joe Judge has been a part of 5 championship teams in the NFL and college ranks, having coached under Bill Belichick and Nick Saban, which I'm sure most of you know. He was a member of the coaching staff who won Super Bowls 49, 51, and 53 with the Patriots, and the 2009 and 2011 college football championships with Alabama. So the man knows how to win, he knows how to get it done, and soon enough, I believe he will do it with the Giants.
Yes, and I'm extremely excited to see what Joe Judge brings to this football team. He has the pedigree. Like you just said, he's won 5 national championships or,
5 championships in total, yeah.
Or just in general. Okay, so 5 championships in general, probably with Alabama and New England. Mm-hmm. That's really, really exciting for the Giants, bringing in a player a coach that knows what it takes to win and how to coach these players. And the one thing I really like that he said, and I'll always revert back to this as my kind of default opinion on Joe Judge, he doesn't want to sign players who are going to coach other players. He wants to bring in coaches who are going to coach the players. That's where Pat Shurmur and a lot of coaches really tend to rely on older guys, experienced veterans to come in and try and actually teach and refine these younger players like Antonio Bethea with DeAndre Baker or Julian Love, that's kind of a situation I would like to stray away from. It's good to have leaders in the locker room, right? That can kind of help tweak things and fine-tune the interworkings of the secondary or whatever unit it might be. But the reality is the coaches should be doing their job at a high level. That's why they're the NFL coaches. That's why they're coaches on the New York Giants. We need to get back to the establishment that the Giants are one of the best franchises in all of sports, and we deserve to have the best of the best. We've been, surviving with mediocrity these past few years, and I'm, for one, tired of it. I'm super tired of it, of losing and waking up every day. Like, we have to create content around losing teams, especially in New York. Like, the Yankees are the only saving grace. But losing teams, and the Giants have really made my life the past few years miserable. And it's hard to compare, right, Anthony? It's hard to compare to a better team. Like, how can you compare? Like, we just started creating content a few years ago, and it's been absolute crap ever since we started. And how do you compare it to a better regimen if you've never seen it, like on the in-depth level that we're looking into these teams?
I mean, it's tough because I have to work from from memory. Like, think back to that 2012 Super Bowl, but I was about 11 years old when that happened. So it is kind of tough for me to compare a good team that I've seen to a bad team that I have to cover. So I've never really gotten that in depth. I mean, I was a diehard fan, super into it back then when we won that Super Bowl, but I was not this in depth. I wasn't writing articles every day. So, I don't know what to compare it to. I can compare it to other teams around the league right now, but still just trying to get that depth. It's tough. And like you said, it can be miserable at times having to write every single day about how bad our football team is. And that's actually another thing is, if I'm like talking to, some friends or somebody at school and they're like, "Oh, you're a Giants fan?" I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "The Giants suck." I'm like, "Yeah, I know. I write about it every single day." That's always my response. And they're like, "Okay, fair enough. At least you know." I'm like, I definitely
exactly
know.
And Giants fans know it too. Like, they'll be the first ones to say, this team is terrible and we have to turn it around. But like you said with Joe Judge, he's coming from a place where he has 5 championships under his belt. He's learned from Nick Saban. He's learned from Bill Belichick. He knows what it takes to win. He knows what a successful culture looks like. And that's gonna lead me down the line to what I have for Tom Coughlin later. So another one of our segments that we're gonna do a little bit later on is our quote of the day. And our quote of the day essentially will be Giants related, obviously, and kind of be relevant to what is happening and what we're going through right now. So we'll get into that later. But my fact of the day is actually about Daniel Jones, and it's actually pretty interesting because a lot of these guys, especially starting level quarterbacks, franchise level quarterbacks in the NFL, were heavily recruited out of high school. Most players at that level that are, except for like Khalil Mack, who came from Buffalo, there's a majority of those high ranking players, like really, really good players that were really good in high school and then went to college and then went to the NFL. Like, that's kind of how you expect it to go. Obviously, there's a bunch of outliers, and Daniel Jones is one of them. He actually wasn't heavily recruited at all. So he went to Charlotte Latin School in Charlotte, North Carolina, and he had pretty much no interest or very little interest from Division I schools. Only 2 teams that were interested in Jones were the Duke Blue Devils. So the 2 teams that, aside from Duke, was Duke, Princeton, and Harvard. So looking at those 3 schools in general, those are 3 like extremely high level schools in terms of academics. So Duke actually isn't an Ivy League, which we just found out before the podcast. We all thought it was. If you were wondering, Duke isn't an Ivy League school, but it's pretty much as close as you can get to being an Ivy League school. Princeton and Harvard, we're talking about a guy in Daniel Jones that has the mental abilities. He can match up with any quarterback, right, in terms of mental aspects and actually diagnosing plays, coverages, learning a playbook. That's why I think him and Jason Garrett are going to be a really good match. And we'll get into that a little bit later about what Kerry Collins said about that connection between Jones and Garrett. But Daniel Jones was only a 2-star recruit out of high school. He was considered the 58th best dual quarterback in the 2015 class and the 54th best player in North Carolina. It's not even like in the actual country. He was the 54th best player in North Carolina. So one of the biggest reasons that Jones struggled to get noticed was a basketball injury. During his junior year of basketball in high school, he broke his wrist, so he couldn't throw during the spring, which is an important time for players to get noticed. So that's actually super interesting. I did not know this prior to this podcast, and I hope this taught you something. Daniel Jones is essentially like, it came out of nowhere. And a lot of people, when they were looking at him at Duke, when Dave Gettleman and all these reports were coming out that they might take Jones, everyone was kind of freaking out because nobody knew about this guy. Everyone knew about the Deshaun Watsons, everyone knew about the Lamar Jacksons, but nobody knew about Daniel Jones. And that's why, he's kind of that sleeper pick. We picked him really, really high in the draft, so they must have been super confident about him. But knowing all this, Anthony, what do you think about him as an NFL player and like his intelligence and just having these schools on his resume, just being interested in him?
Well, I think obviously when you're being recruited by those Ivy League schools, you must be a pretty smart kid. And we know that he is. He's very smart. And I think that him not being heavily recruited, not even looked at as really a college football player coming out of high school just shows the determination and motivation that he plays with and the way that he fights through adversity and, strives to better himself, which we're also going to talk about in a little bit with the Kerry Collins quotes. He's just a guy who wants to get better and is going to do everything that he can to get better. And that's what's gotten him to this point, being the starting quarterback of the New York Giants. And it's what's going to get him past that point to being an elite, maybe top 10, top 5, hopefully, quarterback in the NFL. He is hungry and he wants it, and he's going to make sure that he gets it.
Right. And part of this whole culture change is finding players that suit the mold they are trying to build. And Daniel Jones is, as most people said when he was coming into the NFL, looks like a replica of Eli Manning. But physically, they're actually quite different. Daniel Jones is much more mobile. He just put on an extra 9 pounds to increase his ball security, his strength in the pocket, his ability to hold it down and anchor down in the pocket and actually throw and protect the ball more efficiently. So physically, he's better than Eli. He is really, really good in man coverage. He puts the ball on the mark. He's extremely accurate in the intermediate game. He doesn't have the strongest arm out there, but it's more than capable. We saw those throws to Darius Slayton last year, streaks down the field. He hit them in stride. We know he has the arm strength to get it done. That's not my worry. I actually don't think Daniel Jones has too many problems to get over. He even said the ball security aspect is actually a pretty simple fix, right? Putting on that extra pounds, having better awareness in the pocket, and just a year of experience. That offensive line, Nate Solder gave up 11 sacks last year. 11 sacks. If you compare that to some of the worst, the worst tackles in the league, he is probably worse than all of them in that category. I think he was ranked number 1 in sacks allowed last year, according to PFF. So, that being said, we have to give Daniel Jones some slack here. Going into the NFL, having a turnstile in Nate Solder at left tackle, reminiscent of the old Eric Flowers. It's tough to imagine that he won't improve in 2020, given Andrew Thomas has a good rookie season. If Andrew Thomas has a good rookie season at left tackle, Daniel Jones is going to be a lot better, and he's going to be better anyway, we hope, just having a year under his belt, a year with the same wide receivers, and just healthy playmakers, essentially. We have last season, he didn't have a single game with any of his healthy playmakers. So who do you think, Anthony, is going to be his go-to target in the receiving game?
I think that if he stays healthy, it's going to be Evan Engram. But out of the wide receivers, Darius Slayton, I think that he's got a lot of potential to be that number 1 wide receiver. But I also want to talk about what you were just talking about with the Nate Solder issues. He had 57 pressures allowed last season.
Oh, my God.
Which is just like, what's that? I'm bad at math, but that's got to be at least 3 per game, right? 16 games?
I guess.
Yeah, that has to be. I don't know. Not a mathematician. I'm a writer. But
it's close
unbelievable. It's like unbelievably bad. And when you look at Daniel Jones and his fumbling problems, I think that the best person that you can compare it to is Tony Romo, because he worked with Jason Garrett as well. So Tony Romo fumbled 32 times in his first 3 seasons as a starter. In those 3 seasons, Tony threw 1,307 passing attempts, which is a fumble on 2.4% of those attempts. Over the next 3,028 passing attempts of Romo's career, he fumbled the ball a total of 33 times, 32 in 1,300 and then 33 in over 3,000. So that's only 1.08% of his passing attempts. So Jason Garrett knows how to help the quarterback fix that problem. And I think that obviously bodes well for Daniel Jones, who fumbled at a historic rate last year with 18 fumbles in 12 games. It was unbelievable. But it's possible to fix that. That's a fixable problem. It's not something that's going to It could be, but I don't think it will be something that plagues him for the entirety of his career. I think it's definitely something that he can fix, and he's already said how hard he's working to fix it. So I believe that he will get it fixed probably by this season, if not next season for sure. I think that he'll have that, that fumble percentage down a whole lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he lost 11 of them too. So we're looking at somebody that has a problem, but a lot of it can be attributed to a bunch of different factors. So one of them being the Giants didn't run the ball that much last year. And when they did, they were doing it with an injured Saquon Barkley, or who else did they even have? John Hilleman, like a bunch of guys that, you don't really know that much. They're not the best level of quality. But when you're looking at Saquon Barkley and he's injured, you don't want to put too much pressure on that high ankle sprain. So they're really just utilizing him as a pass blocker mostly. And he was struggling a lot in pass blocking because he couldn't put as much weight on his ankle. So there was so many different factors that played into his fumbling issues. And I think with a healthy Saquon, with Kevin Zeitler, with hopefully a better center because Jalapio was pretty poor, and I think Will Hernandez is going to be the one that actually benefits the most from having a better center and a better left tackle next to him,
and better offensive line coach. I think that's
exactly a better offensive line coach in Mark Colombo, and it's possible they even change in a new scheme. We also have to imagine that Daniel Jones is going to change his drop back. And actually, that's what I want to hit on right now with Nate Solder. Nate Solder is very, very specific. I was actually talking to our offensive line analyst, Matt Genatino, about Nate Solder. He's actually coming out with a video within the next 2 days about Nate Solder and why he struggled with the Giants. This is what he told me. He told me Nate Solder actually didn't change his technique coming over from New England. And the person that told him this was the offensive line coach at Penn State. Okay? So the offensive line coach at Penn State, which is a pretty credible source, so you can actually believe this, told Matt, who told me, so it's a game of telephone, but it's factual. He told me that Nate Solder didn't actually change his technique coming over from New England. And why is that such a big deal? Because Daniel Jones, compared to Tom Brady in terms of drop back, is vastly different. Tom Brady's drop back was about 3 to 4 steps, right? Daniel Jones' drop back was similar to Eli Manning's. He took 7-8 step drop backs. And the issue with this is Nate Solder's technique actually involves him securing the inside shoulder and pushing the the pass rusher right behind him. But when he came over to the Giants, he didn't adapt. And he ended up pushing them right into Eli Manning, pushing them right into Daniel Jones. So I think starting off fresh with a guy like Andrew Thomas and having him actually adapt and develop that chemistry with Daniel Jones early on is essential. That's why I think Andrew Thomas is going to be starting immediately, and Nate Solder is going to be moved over to right tackle. That's what I think is going to happen. Do you also agree with that?
I do. I think that's the only way that it should happen, because I don't think that you should have Andrew Thomas play a year at right tackle if you plan on moving him back to left tackle a year later. Just have him start his career off where you expect him to play the entirety of his career. And I'm also curious to know what the dropbacks looked like in college for Andrew Thomas. I wonder. I might have to research that myself. How far Jake Fromm was dropping back. I would assume that it was probably similar to what Daniel Jones is doing, because in college, like 90% of the time, you're working out of the shotgun. The spread offense, the shotgun. So the dropbacks were probably pretty deep. So it should be a pretty easy and quick transition and adjustment for Andrew Thomas at left tackle. So I think he's obviously going to impress there and then get that starting job. I think that's where he belongs. And, I'm really excited for that, because, like I said, 57 pressures from one player is just, it's unfathomable. You're just asking to get your quarterback killed at that point.
I agree. And, even taking a step further and looking at Daniel Jones, I think he had 12 interceptions last year and 24 touchdowns. That is a really good number to start off of.
2 for 1.
12 interceptions for a rookie isn't too bad. If he decreases on that number and improves in the touchdown category, the Giants will be in really good shape. The passing game wasn't actually my biggest concern. It was the running game. And run blocking was a major issue for the Giants. Sterling Shepard is one of the best run blockers on the team. And that's hands down. He is really, really good at getting downfield and setting blocks up. And Golden Tate's pretty good as well. So I really am excited to see what Andrew Thomas brings into the run game. He is a powerful guy. He is looking for work in the offense, rather in the second level. He is always looking for something to do, somebody to hit, somebody to drive into the ground, pile drive them. I am excited to see him activated in the run game and what he can do with Saquon Barkley. And I think Saquon Barkley should be running outside the tackles more often. He's a really, really good pitch running back because he needs space. He's really good when he has space to make a decision and pick a hole to run through. Last year, they were just running him up the gut, just on these power rushes right up the middle constantly, and I just can't stand that. When you have a guy who's elusive as Saquon Barkley and you're not giving him the space and you're not giving him the patience to actually make plays and you're running him up the middle and you're just essentially 1 yard gain, -3, -4, 3 yard gain. You know how many times we saw that, those 3-and-out drives where they would run it the first 2 plays and they would incomplete pass on third down and they would punt the ball? We saw that like every game continuously. And I for one can't stand to see this anymore. I'm really happy that we have Jason Garrett here just because he has like a decade worth of offensive coaching experience as a head coach, as an offensive play caller, learning from all these different people and coaches. I think it's going to be phenomenal for him to actually come in and make a huge difference for Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley, because we saw what he did with Ezekiel Elliott. And if he does anything like the Cowboys did, who ranked I think they ranked actually 10th or better in like every offensive category, all of them,
for
like
past,
better,
like 5 years,
top 10.
Yeah,
Or
they
I'm
do it
talking
every
specifically
year.
with Kellen Moore. Specifically with Kellen Moore last year, they ranked top 10 in every offensive category.
Yeah.
And they ranked number 1 in passing efficiency and passing production.
Well, that's the
What
main
more can
thing
I
that
say?
you were talking about with like the halfback dives and everything. Every time that they were going to run a halfback dive up the middle, I could call it. I could see it coming from a mile away.
Yep.
And obviously
Pistol
the defense could
formation
too.
down.
Yeah, it was so obvious, and that's the difference between Pat Shurmur and Jason Garrett, because Pat Shurmur had really little to no creativity in the way he ran the football. There was no pre-snap motion at all, but that's something that Jason Garrett uses a lot more. He obviously doesn't use it as much as teams like the Chiefs and 49ers, who are like pioneers of the run game at this point, who are just, and the Ravens as well, who are using all that pre-snap motion and just running for 200 yards a game. No, that's not Jason Garrett, but he's definitely better than Pat Shurmur was. He does use some pre-snap motion and have some creativity in his run plays, and it's going to lead to obviously more outside runs for Saquon, which, like you said, is huge, and then just more efficient running and run blocking. And you also mentioned Andrew Thomas and the way that he run blocks, and that's something I'm really looking forward to, because I think, not to say he's a bad pass blocker, because he's a good pass blocker, but he's like kind of an elite run blocker. That's what he's really good at. He gets out there, he's big, he's strong, and another thing is that he's really smart. He'll find one guy, block him, and then go find another and block like 2-3 people in one play. He's got the like field awareness to find multiple people to block in one play, and I think that's really special. It's one of his best attributes, and I think obviously Saquon running behind Andrew Thomas is like, it's going to be a match made in heaven. It's going to be a dream. It's going to be really, really, really exciting.
I agree. I think everything about what we're about to see in the offense is going to be different. And Jason Garrett's going to play a major part in that. But what I was going to say is what really, really grinds my gears, and like you said, the fact that Matt Breida and was it CJ Mostert or whoever it was on the
I think it's Raheem Mostert.
Mostert.
Yeah, Matt Breida. And then
Matt
they
Breida.
had Tevin Coleman, who played well, but then he got injured.
Right, he did. So looking at Raheem Mostert and Matt Breida, these two guys are lighting up the NFL. Right, these two like running backs that came out of nowhere. Matt Breida's kind of been around. He's super fast, but he wasn't a top first or second round pick, I don't believe. So
No, definitely not.
the fact that Saquon Barkley, who is exponentially better than both of them, can't produce exponentially better numbers is mind blowing to me. If he doesn't produce in 2020, I'm gonna be very, very angry, because you don't draft a running back number 2 overall for them to be worse than Raheem Mostert and Matt Breida in terms of production. He needs to be the focal point, and he needs to be like Dan. I think Saquon Barkley is the offense. He is the identity of the offense. His unpredictability should actually be opening up things for Daniel Jones in the passing game, right? His ability to break plays, his ability to catch passes at a very high level, to pass block, to the unpredictability he brings, because the play action is such a big part of an offense when you have a a running back like Saquon Barkley, he's going to open up so many doors, but he needs to be playing at a very high level, and a great offensive line is where it starts, like you said before. Mark Colombo is going to make a big difference here.
Yeah, and I'll say you are kind of giving a lot of legitimacy to those who argue running backs don't matter, and Saquon Barkley isn't worth a number 2 pick, period. And, there's definitely truth to that, but obviously, I don't want to get into that one because, people like our boy Willie Receipts are going to make a big argument in favor of firing Dave Gettleman if we start discussing this. So I'll just say, like, the way that your offense is ran is a lot of the times, like, the scheme is more important than the personnel. If you have an excellent scheme, you can plug anybody in there and find success. And I don't think that we're going to have, like, one of those amazing schemes under Jason Garrett, but it's definitely going to be improved to the point where just everybody should be more efficient. And this will actually lead into the quote of the day that I have from Joe Judge, because this is definitely relevant. What I learned from Coach Belichick was real simple. Be flexible within your personnel. Don't try to shove round pegs into square holes. Figure out what you have and let them play to their strengths. Don't sit in a meeting and tell me what you don't have in a player. Don't tell me that they can't do certain things. Tell me what they can do, and we'll figure out as coaches, because that's our job, how we can use that. That's our responsibility. Everybody has something that they can do. And that's really important, because that really just applies to what we were talking about with the personnel and the schemes, having everybody play to their strengths, and having a strong scheme where you can plug players in and get the most out of them because you know their strengths, and that's all they're asked to do. I mean, that quote from Joe Judge from the introductory press conference, that was literally music to my ears, because I felt like that was the biggest flaw with our last 2 coaching regimes, because I think those coaches were really trying to plug players and make them fit a scheme rather than building the scheme around the players. So I love the flexibility that Joe Judge is talking about here, and I think that it's going to be probably the biggest change and improvement going from Shermer and McAdoo to Joe Judge.
Right, and I think that Garrett's scheme is going to be encompassing of all of the different things he's learned over the last decade. Kellen Moore actually changed his style of offense, like, week in and week out, to fit the opposing team. So it was very adaptable, and he made it extremely creative so that his team could actually build around it and succeed. And it was all about their playmakers. But talking about putting square pegs or circular pegs?
Round pegs in the square holes.
Okay, so round pegs into square holes. Talking about that, can we please stop running back dives with Saquon Barkley? Because that is a perfect analogy, or rather comparison, for how Shermer was running Saquon Barkley up the middle on 1st and 10 when he should be running outside the tackles. He should be given space and time, and he should be in the play action, screen passes. This is what I like to call, we saw Saquon Barkley in his rookie year, and he looked phenomenal behind a terrible offensive line, but it was mostly because, 1, he was healthy, and 2, you guys saw the unbelievable plays that he made. Yeah. Normal running backs, normal people don't make plays like that. Pushing people to the ground, like literally grabbing tacklers, shoving them into the ground, and running 50 yards. Like, he was not in a position to do that. He should have been tackled for losses on half of those big runs. But he is just so strong, so athletic, and so powerful, he was able to create plays. What I would like to see is open running lanes for him to run through without having to be touched.
Yeah.
I don't want him to have to make extraordinary plays. Obviously, I love it when he does it, and it's awesome, but I would prefer him to just run 50 yards straight through running lanes and actually have good play calling, good blocking, and not have to exert an exorbitant amount of energy running 5 yards on like a makeshift play where he's shoving people in the dirt and jump cutting over human beings that are 6'5". Like, that's not what I want to see. I love it, but I don't want to see that. I want to see efficient run blocking. I want to see open lanes, and I want to see him bouncing it outside and utilizing his strengths. Like you said, putting round pegs in round holes.
Right.
Sounds really weird now, but you get what I'm saying.
I get it, yeah. And I'll say, I don't think that it's necessarily like you have to take the halfback dive out of the playbook. Like, there's times where you obviously need to run up the middle. You can't always run outside, but the thing is that when Pat Shermer would run up the middle, it was just so painfully obvious what they were doing because of the situation
Fullback.
and when he was doing it. There was just no creativity. Yeah, as soon as a fullback goes in, you know where they're going. It's going to be right down the center of the offensive line every single time.
You could call plays.
Yeah, honestly, like probably we have some viewers out there, maybe ourselves, we can probably call more creative plays in certain situations than Pat Shurmur was doing last year because it was that bad. It was just so predictable. But, like we said, obviously with Ezekiel Elliott, when we watch him, that man likes to run down the middle because he is one of those big physical backs who can run over people. But Saquon Barkley is more of a finesse runner. He's got power, but he is more finesse. So I'm excited to see him get more pitches in outside zones and all of that. And maybe, hopefully, some more screen passes this year, too. I think that's something that they underutilized him in last year. I thought in his rookie year, they used that a lot. They gave him a lot of nice screen passes, and he made a lot of great plays. But then I feel like in year 2, probably because of the injury, he didn't get as many targets in the passing game, especially on the screens. But I think that's something that he really excels in, and they need to emphasize that in the offense this year.
Absolutely. I think screen passes and throwing to running backs in general is all about timing. And once you know you have an opposing defense, trying to figure out what you're going to do, that's the best time to start getting creative. Like we know how efficient Ezekiel Elliott. Like imagine every time you've watched the Giants play the Cowboys. It seems like Ezekiel Elliott is just running free at all times. Because the Giants always are caught looking. They're always caught trying to figure out what is going on. And the second they think Amari Cooper's slanting across the middle, suddenly Ezekiel Elliott's free in the flat running for a 30-yard gain. Like we saw with Blake Jarwin. Like they do it with their tight ends too. They break them off the line of scrimmage, and suddenly Blake Jarwin and you have Janoris Jenkins alligator arming people. Yeah. And like now we're sitting here like, oh, we're gonna lose to the Cowboys again. Like I can't even recall 2 wins against the Cowboys in the last 3 years. And it's getting to a point where I don't even enjoy watching those games anymore because I figure we're just gonna lose. I'm tired of that. I want to beat the Cowboys. I want to beat the Eagles. I want to beat Washington. Like all of these teams that I just can't stand watching, especially the Eagles and especially the Cowboys. Like their fans just piss me off to no end. I really just want to beat them. And if you're a Giants fan, you're with me on this. Like beating the Cowboys and Eagles is probably 2 of the most exciting and just fun and enjoyable moments that you can have. It's like winning the Super Bowl every time you beat the Eagles or Cowboys. And that's what I want to get back to. And not to mention, beating teams like that helps your culture. Oh, yeah. It's a huge aspect. Beating division rivals gives you such a good place and gives you so much momentum. It's incredible. Those big primetime matchups at Arlington, Texas, and AT&T facing Jerry Jones and his couch and his $100 million couch, we want to beat the crap out of Jerry Jones' team. That's what we want to do, and I want to get back to that. I think Joe Judge is going to bring us back to that promised land. But I really enjoyed your quote of the day, Anthony. It always gets me on a tangent. But my quote of the day is from Tom Coughlin. I think you guys will appreciate this one. Winning is what happens when commitment, desire, talent, preparation, hard work, and leadership all come together. So, Anthony, I'm going to let you kind of look into that. And I'm going to say it one more time so that you can think about it a little bit more. Winning is what happens when commitment, desire, talent, preparation, hard work, and leadership all comes together. We haven't seen that. What are you thinking?
When I hear that quote and I hear all of those traits that you just listed, that Tom Coughlin listed, honestly, I just think of Daniel Jones. I think the commitment, the talent, the leadership, it's all blending together. We're seeing it by, reading every week or so how he's out there grinding, adding 9 pounds of muscle, working on his ball security, being a leader, setting up workouts with teammates, all of that. I think that quote to me just rings in my head. Daniel Jones, this is the guy. He's the leader. He's the talented quarterback that we needed. So that's obviously a very important quote. I mean, for every player, because those are obviously traits that all of them should strive to excel in. But I just think when you hear that and you think of Daniel Jones, it's like it's synonymous. That quote is synonymous with Daniel Jones, and that's what gets me really excited about our new quarterback.
Yeah, and here's something that I was just thinking of it on a macro level. You think okay, the franchise quarterback, whether it's Russell Wilson, Daniel Jones, Tom Brady, they're the leader of your team, right? They're the leader of your team. But how often is your franchise quarterback leading the secondary group, the cornerbacks unit, or the safeties unit. They're not. Most of the time, Daniel Jones, Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers are spending time with their respective units, their offense. They're in the quarterback's room. They're learning. They're watching film. It's not all the time that they're there building this leadership and this culture. They're focusing on improving their game too. So looking at it on a micro level, every unit has to have a player that takes the reins and says, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to do it at a high level, and I'm going to rein everybody in and make sure that everyone's doing their job at the highest level possible. So, let's look at each unit really quickly and see, who is that guy that the Giants have. So right off the bat, we can look at the quarterbacks, and we can say Daniel Jones is that guy, right? He's the franchise quarterback. He is the leader of the offense. Then you have the running backs unit. Saquon Barkley is by far the best leader on the offense and the team, in my opinion. That's how I feel. I think Saquon Barkley is the best leader. Then you look at the wide receivers unit. Do you see a leader there? I think maybe Golden Tate might have taken on that leadership role, but he's also could be cut after this year, and people know that. Players know that he might be gone after this year.
I think Sterling Shepard is also a really good leader, though. I would say that he's a great leader of that group. Now, if you want to talk about the tight ends, I'd say it might be a little tougher to find that guy because obviously we cut Red Ellison. I think he was the leader, so obviously Evan Ingram's going to have to step up this year. Yeah, I think Evan Ingram, he has the experience now where people will take him seriously. He's been in the league 2 years or 3 years. 3 years. Yeah, 3 years. He's in the league 3 years now, so we know that he has the experience and the knowledge to lead a tight ends unit, you could say. They brought in Levine Toilolo, who I assume is also a high character guy, extremely strong, experienced. He was just in a Super Bowl with the San Francisco 49ers, so he could probably come in and be that leader as well. Every single unit, like we're saying right now, has to have that guy. That's why they're valuing Leonard Williams so much, by the way. He is extremely important to the interior defensive line because I heard what Dexter Lawrence said about him. I don't know if you guys heard. I heard what Dalvin Tomlin said about him. They said he makes us all better. Mm-hmm. He brings the tenacity. He brings the strength. Meanwhile, I don't think he's worth $16 million per season. But for 1 year, it is what it is. It's 1 year. And the reality is the Giants aren't winning a Super Bowl this year. They're still rebuilding. So it's okay to pay him this year. If they want to extend him on a long-term contract, see how he performs, and if he really can rein this interior defensive line in and make them a high-caliber unit, I am okay with paying him, $12, $13 million per season on a long-term deal. I'm okay with that. Now, looking to the secondary, who is the guy there? Is James Bradbury the leader? I don't really know. They have a lot of young guys. DeAndre Baker's certainly not the leader right now. I don't think he ever will be after what's going on. Look at it. James Bradbury's the guy with the most experience. I'd have to assume he's the guy. I'd say Jabril Peppers is probably ready to step up in that role, I would think. He's been in the league
he's
now,
high
I think,
charismatic
3
guy.
years. Yeah, he's obviously a more outspoken leader. I'd say probably James Bradbury. I don't know as much about him as I know about Jabril Peppers since he played for the Panthers his whole career, but he seems like a really more watch and learn leader. But Jabril Peppers is one of those guys that's going to go out there, scream in your face, and get you hyped up, and then tell you, give you a pat on the back and say, go get him, and that kind of leader that you want to go into a fight with. So I'd say Jabril Peppers is probably the leader of our defense right now. He's probably the heart of it.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And another guy that, we're going to dive into right now before we wrap up, Xavier McKinney. Mm-hmm. He is a leader in the community and on the field. If you guys have been, watching Xavier McKinney on Twitter, social media, not only is he advocating for, just a betterment of society, but he's interacting with fans and making it personal. We don't see players like that very often that are taking the time to connect with fans, talk to them, build a more personal brand and communicative nature with them. And he's coming from Alabama, right, under Nick Saban. Nick Saban had fantastic things to say about him. Yeah. So we know he's a great player. He's one of the best tacklers in the draft. He created 7 turnovers last year, 4 forced fumbles, 3 interceptions. When you force 4 fumbles, a guy knows how to tackle. His technique and fundamentals are fantastic. And he's not that big of a guy if you look at him, but his game speed, that guy can fly. He's a first-round pick we got in the second round. Yeah. And I hope everybody realizes that we got a high-end first-round pick, in the second round. There was just so many other positions that are, talking about positional value, there was just so many other positions that were so stacked this year that he fell. That's why. Any other year, he would be a first-round pick with ease. The Giants managed to get arguably the best safety free safety in the class in Xavier McKinney, and I want to let you kind of talk about him and the statistics behind what makes him so great.
Yeah, I've got a few really nice stats to point out. This one's from Pro Football Focus. He had 10 pressures as a junior and 21 pressures across 71 pass rushing snaps in the past 2 years, which is just an unreal rate. 21 pressures out of 71 pass rushing snaps. I mean, that is, I don't know the percentage because, once again, I'm not a mathematician, but that's a really high percentage of pressure rate. And so, that obviously ties into what we've been discussing the past few weeks on this podcast, is how the pressure is going to come from the scheme, not necessarily from the players, because we don't have a dominant edge rusher on this roster. But we've got Patrick Graham, who loves to blitz and play man coverage and use those safeties and to blitz with those safeties. And we know Xavier McKinney is a guy who's going to be really productive in those safety blitzes. And then I'll also point out Xavier McKinney, this is also from PFF, he played over 200 snaps at 3 different positions in college, 323 snaps in the box, 227 snaps in the slot, and 271 snaps at deep safety. So the guy plays all over the field. We didn't get Isaiah Simmons like a lot of our fan base wanted, but we kind of got the next best thing with Xavier McKinney. He can play in the slot, deep, in the box, whatever. He can do it. He can blitz, he can cover, he can tackle, run support. This was really a home run draft selection by the Giants. This was a guy who could have been a top 20 pick in this draft if, like you said, it wasn't so stacked in other positions. And in terms of positional value, he did end up falling to the second round, but that doesn't mean he's a second round prospect. He is by far a first round prospect, and we got really, really lucky to snag him in the second round of this year's draft.
I agree, man. I am so excited. He is so versatile, and I've been saying the same thing. He's essentially a knockoff version of Isaiah Simmons, but he's at the safety position. Right. Like his versatility and the ability to adapt to different positions. I am so excited to see what Patrick Graham can do with him, because he blitzes a ton. He blitzed 41% on third downs in 2019. Like the guy with better talent. Miami was crap last year. If you guys watched Miami, their defense was absolute garbage. It was like having Eric Flower at every damn position. So Patrick Graham is going to bring a scheme here, and he's incredibly talented and intelligent guy as well. If these defenders can, he's from Stanford. If he can pick up some of these, if the players can pick up his scheme quickly, I think that they're going to be a lot better than most believe. I posted yesterday on Twitter that ESPN ranked the Giants' defense 31st in the NFL. Meanwhile, they were ranked 30th last year, so we actually got dropped one spot. And I'm sitting here like, a lot of people were arguing with me, and I'm sitting here like, wait a second. How on earth did they get worse? And I get like, okay, their schedule's tough, but overall, there is no way the defense actually got worse, and I'll tell you why. Every single one of their rookies, we had 7 players that had starting reps in 2019. All of them now have a year of experience under their belt. We replaced Alec Miss Tackle Ogletree with Blake Martinez, who I wouldn't say is a massive improvement, but Blake Martinez is better. And he was also being played in a very strange scheme in Green Bay, where he was actually in like zone coverage, which is why he was so bad. His stats look so bad in coverage. He wasn't playing man coverage. He was actually in a mesh zone scheme that was allowing wide receivers to travel in front of him, and he wasn't able to pick them up because somebody else was supposed to be there to pick them up. So him playing in a little bit more man coverage in a Patrick Graham system that plays 50% man coverage is a very good sign. I think he'll be better there, and he's going to clean up a lot of plays. His job essentially is to sit back, contain big plays, and rack up tackles. He's a tackler by nature. That's what he does. And then you have James Bradbury, who's coming in and filling in for Janoris Jenkins. I loved Jenkins personally over the past few years. He's been our number one guy. We've seen what he did to Des Bryant back in the day, but he's on a downward trend. He's getting older. He gave up some really big plays to Mike Evans. He had like 150 yards and 3 touchdowns against Janoris Jenkins. So I think Bradbury will be better. And that is an improvement in my opinion, just because he's younger, he's more hungry, he's got, the more adaptation to some incredible wide receivers in his previous division with Carolina, and Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. You got what's his name, Michael Thomas from New Orleans.
Yep.
Some really, really good players there, and he is adapted to all of them, and he knows how to cover. The NFC East is like a joke compared to them in terms of wide receiver talent. The Eagles have like Adam Sandler playing wide receiver now, Alshon Jeffrey. I don't even know if he's still there, but Nelson Aguilar. They got what's his name, Ruggs? No, Jalen Reagor. Jalen Reagor.
Yeah. Who could end up being a pretty talented player. So we'll see. And the Cowboys, obviously, they have a Cooper, and you're about to say they have CeeDee Lamb now. So that's kind of scary. Yeah, that's really scary because they also have Michael Gallup. Like that's a nasty receiver corpse.
They're good. They have a very good wide receiver corpse. But then you have Washington, who has Terry McLaurin, and he's good, but he's not Cooper or CeeDee Lamb level, in my opinion. You never know. He might have a really, really good year. He kind of looks like OBJ a little bit if you watch him play. A little bit. So, we're seeing this transition of better, younger talent step in, and I think the defense is actually going to be better because of it. So I think that ranking is a little bit wayward and a little crazy in my opinion. I think they'll probably land in like the 25 range, which is an improvement, I think at least. Yeah. So it is what it is. But before we go, I just want to read these Kerry Collins comments because we did mention them and we did not get to them just yet. Yeah. So I'll read them to you and we can respond to them for a minute. So Kerry Collins, two Pro Bowls with the Giants. He played for a few years there, and he kind of was like the segue into the Eli Manning era. So this is what he had to say about Jason Garrett and his connection with Daniel Jones. For a guy like Jones, who has obviously shown a lot of ability, Jason is going to help him immensely with everything. He's not just going to be an X's and O's guy. He's going to talk about the position and what it means to be successful. I'm really excited to see that combination. I'm sure Jason is going to be heavily involved with Daniel's development. I just could not think of a better guy to have with Jones right now. His brains, the kind of guy he is, I think that match will be absolutely phenomenal. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, if there's anyone who you want to hear talk about Jason Garrett, it's probably the guy who played with Jason Garrett. Kerry Collins was the starter, and Jason Garrett was his backup for quite a few years with the Giants. And I think, we don't know as well as he does, but I agree. I mean, it looks like this is a perfect match because obviously, the way Jason Garrett runs his offense with so much play action and everything, that's perfect for what Daniel Jones likes to do. And like I said earlier with the Tony Romo fumbling thing, he helped Tony Romo get past that and really become a really secure quarterback, and he didn't fumble like at all after Jason Garrett got with him. And I think that's obviously important for Daniel Jones, who's got a real fumbling problem. So, I'm going to take Kerry Collins' word for it. I think that this probably is a perfect matchup. I agree, and I really hope that he's right, and I hope that I'm right because, if you can get your offensive coordinator and your quarterback to be on the same page at all times and really just in sync at all times, that's like, when I think of something like that, I think of Tom Brady and Josh McDaniels, how they were always on the same page and they were like perfect together for 20 years almost. And so I just hope that, the Giants with Jason Garrett and Daniel Jones can really, maybe they can form like a similar chemistry, probably not to that extreme, but hopefully close enough. And then, we can get a lot of success out of our quarterback and offense for the next decade or so.
Exactly. And, I want to give, just a little objection in general, just because we saw what Pat Shurmur, and we were really excited about Pat Shurmur because we saw what he did with Case Keenum and how he pretty much elevated Case Keenum to a level that he shouldn't have been at. But with that being said, Jason Garrett really, like you said, really helped Tony Romo alleviate some serious problems. And look what Dak Prescott has become. They had the number one passing offense in the league last year under Dak Prescott, which we all kind of look at and say,
fourth-round draft
pick.
That's
what I'm saying. How the hell is it possible that Dak Prescott is doing so well? It doesn't make much sense to me personally. But with that being said, look at what he's done. And if he can replicate that with Daniel Jones, I think we're in a pretty damn good spot moving forward to see some success. And that's really all that we want to do here. But, if you have any final remarks, say it or die.
Or die? Ooh,
or die.
No, I mean, I'm just really excited about this season, man. I'm excited, obviously, for everything that we have planned, like you mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, like those tailgates that we want to do and all of that. Like, I'm really excited for that. And I'm excited to keep growing this Fireside Giants community and fan base. I'm thankful to all the viewers. And like I was saying earlier, I'm really excited to watch Daniel Jones and the rest of the Giants offense take that step this year. So these are exciting times, and I'm really happy that we have a great fan base to discuss it with and share it with, and really looking forward to growing this and just having a lot of fun over these next few months gearing into the football season.
Absolutely, and I'm really excited as well. So everyone who's listening, thank you for tuning in. Make sure to go check out the YouTube. We're going to have the video up, podcast for audio if you prefer that. And keep in mind, we're going to be rolling out the NFL Draft Network soon on ESM. It's going to be sick, insider information. We're going to have just incredible content, guys. Like I'm actually super excited because I'm excited to learn about it. That's going to be the best part. Is like we're going to learn so much about the game of football, how coaches, like imagine getting coached but not having to actually do the drills. That's like the best part of not being an athlete anymore. Is like you can just learn about the game, and you can watch TV, you can watch the games on television or in person and start to identify these things on a more in-depth level, and just be able to just have fun learning and enjoying something and be able to teach other people. It's going to be incredible to experience, and we have some incredible people coming on the channel to really make this more enjoyable for you guys. So we're going to send all this information your way via the podcast, via written content, via YouTube. We're going to really help you guys consume it as easily as possible, and I hope everyone is really safe. I know coronavirus is still out there, and there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, so I really hope that everyone is doing well. Stay safe and enjoy the rest of your day.
TVSO.